Well, hello everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of Certified Forgotten, something you haven't heard from us in a little while because the last couple of weeks, life got in the way. You've had a couple of episodes of myself and my co-host Matt Donato talking about relatively new releases, industry trends. We've talked about Fantastic Fest, which is right around the corner, but we're getting back to the fucking bread and butter, the thing that keeps this podcast running. We're back to a full hour long episode with an excellent guest where we talk about some underseen horror cinema. And Donato, I miss it. I know that the business model we developed for ourselves it doesn't get a lot of that trending traffic, but my God, when we're not talking about shit nobody wants to hear about, I feel like a piece of myself is missing.
I agree with you because this we started the podcast based on this premise. While all of you have been very nicely listening to our uncertified episodes, and when we dig into new stuff, we appreciate that. And it is fun for me to talk about newer films and have our film critique debates between me and Monagle. But this is where it is. I want to rediscover movies. I want to put them out. Even looking at some film festivals this year alone, before the fall that we covered with Becky Sayers and is getting a 4K restoration and playing Fantastic Fest. The Curse is played fantastic. It's very nice to be a little bit vindicated to see the movies that we are bringing to this podcast and the guests who bring them, because it's not us. The guests are the one that find the movies and say, hey, dumbasses, let's talk about it. So it's all that big fucking working circle. And I just love this podcast because right now it's preventing me from having a panic attack before Fantastic Fest because I am not ready.
That's correct. Hey, you know what? Speaking of Fantastic Fest, I'm particularly excited for this week's guest. One, it's good to see them again because the last time that I saw them, she and her husband were force feeding me rumple shots, which was a very, very bad experience for me. So I'm glad to be under more professional circumstances. But two, today's guest also has super strong ties to Fantastic Fest and is part of that community. I'm sure Fantastic Fest is going to come up a lot in our conversation, but on the eve of the festival, with all of the great kind of stuff that we discovered at Fantastic Fest, it feels like the perfect time to be talking about it. So, Donato, if you can introduce our guest, please.
Absolutely. Number one, you should not have told me that this guest forced you to do rumple shots because Brooklyn's going to be fun now. Now that I know this happened. Oh, buddy.
Nope.
Anyway, so I'm now bringing a guest who I'm very thankful to have heard made Mr. Monagle do rumple shots, but also this guest is the editor-in-chief of the independent website But Why Though, Miss Kate Sánchez. Kate, thank you for being here.
Hi, I do also want to correct the record because this is a very important thing. The rumple shots came after a shot of Malort. It was, in fact, the most cursed pairing we could have given him. It was beautiful, and I'm glad that's how we ended your time here.
It was. I am among friends, like genuine friends, like people I hang out with outside of film stuff. So I feel comfortable saying this. I lost so much of that night that for like 4 days afterwards, I asked Andrea, I was like, are you sure that I wasn't an asshole? She was like, you're fine. You're fine. You're fine. That night is as bad a night as I've had since New York City, since I lived in New York. So that's quite a testament, I think, to you and to Matt, who just kept plying me with really awful / kind of good shots of alcohol.
Look, that is the Texas hospitality I aspire for.
I love that.
I can see Monagle having really bad anxiety. I get anxiety, don't get me wrong. I definitely have that day after, oh shit, what did I do kind of thing, but it's never anything bad. But I know Monagle, and I know that guilt. Your anxiety has to be the worst.
It's pretty bad. And next time we hang out, I'll share stories about how much anxiety I can get into and how much I can talk myself into a lather. But these are not stories about independent cinema. These are stories about Matt. So let's put the focus back on Kate. As we always do with our guests, we want to start by asking a little bit about your relationship to the horror genre. So, Kate, one of the things I like about you is that you are probably one of the widest breadths of film and entertainment coverage of folks I know. There is not a corner of entertainment, from video games to film to genre film to animation, that you don't tackle. It's what I love about butwhythough.net. Getting the .net in there for you, Donato, making sure that the other Matt will be very happy. But I want to talk specifically about your relationship to horror. What are those early informative memories for you in your, I won't even say discovery, but your early encounters with the genre?
I love this question because I don't know what my life is without horror. Very specifically because I think a lot of people depending on where you grew up, more rural places certainly have this as well. But we had stories of La Llorona, stories of the Duende, stories of Palmalo. Like we had like all of these different ways that my grandmother kept us in check by scaring the living shit out of us constantly. Like down to the fact that once like my grandmother had decided, it could be the daytime, mind you, and she would fake cry out of her window in her bedroom saying mis hijos to get us inside because she just didn't want to have to watch us outside anymore. And it's funny because I had at the time I had never really thought about that as being really formative, because at that point you're you know, you don't want to be scared. But what that really instilled in me was appreciation for where folklore takes us and how it really actually informs what we're afraid of,
Mhm.
what is terrifying, what is not terrifying, and ultimately how we connect with people. Because my mom very much the same way. My mom loved horror movies. She would put them on. She definitely covered my eyes for some of them. I probably watched The Exorcist way too young, but as Catholic she wanted me not to fight with her, and thus she showed me The Exorcist, because if we fought the devil would get in.
Yep.
And so I think that like horror for me has just been a mainstay in my familial relationships. And I've just, it's like breathing, which is really freaking cheesy to say. But like, I don't know a single part of my life that hasn't been informed by some sort of horror storytelling. Like the Guillermo del Toro quote is very much like, I like this crap because I'm Mexican, and we just don't know how to relate to each other if we're not scaring each other or threatening each other with the devil. So here I am.
I think that's always interesting as a late coming horror fan. Someone who was very fearful as a child and anxious, so I avoided horror. But I did that as an American too. And, I wrote this piece one time just about like using horror as my passport and opening my borders just from watching movies.
Oh, wow.
And like, it's exactly what you're saying. Like, I'm so enthralled by the fact that all these other cultures have this folklore that is told like to children and stuff, and the way that it is accepted. So there is less of a fear, there is more of a connection to the afterlife and all these things, where in America it is the prudish, it is the we avoid it. If it is bad, if it is scary, it is not good. So like, it wasn't evil in my household, it just wasn't
Yeah.
something my parents wanted to be any part of. And it still is that thing to this day where you watch those crazy movies, you watch that gory stuff, and it's like, yeah, but they're actually telling good stories. And you watch Asian cinema and you see like Korean horror films and how spiritual they are and how they can be
Mhm.
like soothing and terrifying at the same time. So yeah, like I always love hearing that. Like, Dorina was just on the podcast and echoing the same things about Mexican culture, just being, she said the exact, like she brought the Del Toro quote, just being like, I'm Mexican, everything's fucking scary. Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. It like makes me feel better, like one, knowing that other people feel that way, and also like hearing how you used horror to explore other stuff, because I think that that's like at, at the end of it all of us get scared. Like
Yeah.
every single person in this world gets scared, unless you're like Patrick Bateman, whatever. Even then, he's kind of scared of some stuff. It was just different. But I think that that's what's really interesting about it, and it's why I love giving people horror recommendations too. It's why I like doing horror lists. It's because like you can map your personality, a feeling, an idea into just a list of 5, 10 films, and you can use it to talk to somebody else. Like my mom never really watched international horror, and I had written a list on our site for like international horror films on Netflix. The reason I wrote that list was because my mom asked me, like, Mijita, like what movies should I be like, I've run out of stuff. Like what can I watch? I want to watch horror movies. What should I do? And so I obviously didn't send her that list because she does not really use the internet, but I did send her a text message with all of them. And I think that like there's something beautiful about being able to tap into what other people are afraid of, and then also
Mhm.
bond. I think for the first Fantastic Fest mention, one of the things I love about walking out of a Fantastic Fest movie, especially like I think of The Lodge specifically. I watched the first screen of The Lodge late at night. That theater was entirely silent, and walking out of it at the end of that movie and unpacking like the very different things that made me and like the two other people I was with deeply uncomfortable were not the same, but we were all uncomfortable and really scared.
Yep.
And like, I don't know, horror, like horror and comedy are two of the most empathetic mediums for storytelling, and I think that that's why it's beautiful, and also it's just great to scare kids. I don't know, it's fun. Now
It
that we
is.
have like nieces and nephews and stuff, we're just we have become the adults saying mis hijos out the window. So
Yes, we have. Yeah, and I like. I mean, Donato, I like the way you put it about horror being your passport. I brought this book up. I didn't keep a lot of my books from film school just because a lot of it was denser than I needed to have access to in my everyday life. But I've always kept a copy of Adam Lowenstein's Shocking Representation, which is a book that delves into national trauma and horror and the relationship between those two. And it's not an accident that anytime that you dig deep, you look at a country and you're like, oh, what was their first their first international horror release? For a lot of countries, that first international piece of film, the thing that got distribution outside of their native country was a horror movie. I mean, the most obvious and easy example, right, is like Juan of the Dead, which opened up an entire new market, and it was basically doing its spin on zombie tropes with a lot of specificity of growing up in that nation and under past regimes. So part of what I love about the horror genre is the idea that it sort of feels like a lot of countries that are putting their heart on a plate and being like, here's the worst thing that happened to us, and we're going to give you a scary movie about that. Whether it was genocide, whether it was violence, whether it was post-war trauma, and you're going to understand us a little bit better on the other side of this than you might have before. This is your gateway into a little bit of our local history. I'm with you, Kate. I think that's such a beautiful thing.
yeah, it's funny not to bring up K-pop Demon Hunters because I definitely don't bring that up in every conversation that I
That's
have
reference
anymore.
one. Fantastic Fest, one reference. K-pop Demon Hunters, one reference. We're gonna see
Get
which
the
is.
counter going. Take
Yeah,
a
we got
shot
it.
of Rumple every time I mention them.
Don't do that.
But the reason I bring that up is because a lot of people didn't realize that what you're seeing in K-pop Demon Hunters, which is not a horror movie, but it is dealing with exorcisms. It is dealing with Korean folklore and the ways in which Korean shaman, who are predominantly women, almost always women, exercise those demons through music, through song, and through dancing. And so it's one of those elements that like I wouldn't have known that if I hadn't watched The Wailing. Right? There's a new video game coming out from I believe it's Nexon called Wuchi, and the cinematic trailer that they show, it is a snippet of a battle where a woman is dancing in the exorcism clothing with the same type of strings and drum beats in the background, and I was like, oh crap, I know exactly what that is. This is a demon game. And I think that it's those little nuances that like I also love the horror as a passport thing. Like I do believe like once you realize something, it makes the culture seem more familiar, and when it pops up in other mediums, it feels like you're really understanding it in a way, and you can teach others and show others. And I think that that's what I've really appreciated as I've expanded my own palette, because I wasn't always somebody who watched a whole bunch of Korean horror films. I think I was always focused on J horror myself, but as I've like learned more and seen more, I think it's just these little moments of, I don't know, just seeing kind of the thread that goes across everything for different cultures. Like what is the way that you tell your horror story? And for a lot of Korean films, it is exorcisms, and it is dealing with the idea of something that does not belong in a space. And you see that down to the historical context and historical horrors that you see happening. Sometimes like some of the horror K-drama series as well. So
Nick, you mentioned just now, your own self-betterment, right? That you're continuing to try and expand your knowledge of South Korean, as we all are, all trying to, watch every movie in our preferred genres of every nationality, and it'll just never happen. But I'm curious, at what point you began to see writing about film, talking about film specifically as something that you want to do professionally. You've been doing it for a very long time now, but was there sort of a turning point for you, be it in high school, be it in college, where you were like, oh, I got to get some ideas down because I think maybe I have something I want to say that other people would like to hear?
yeah, I stopped my PhD program. Like very specifically, I was in a PhD program, got my master's, was going through an absolute hellstorm of just what it's like to be a woman, a brown woman in academia. And I had to kind of like make my choice. Was I in love with the study of pop culture And is that something I had to do in this space that was kind of eating me alive? My husband puts it as like, I did not quit it, it quit me, somewhere in that process. And I went to the American Academy of Religion conference in San Antonio, and I sat in on a live podcast recording about the Marvel TV shows on Netflix. And I asked like a really pointed question about Luke Cage. And then that guy, J.R. Forasteros, who still does podcasting, invited me on a podcast about Luke Cage. And then that was when I realized that, like, oh, people actually want to hear about all my weird thoughts and ways that I think pop culture moves us to teach people about other people, which is what my thesis and my dissertation were about. It was about how when you don't know anybody, when people who don't look a certain way, praise a certain god, are in your vicinity, you use pop culture, you use how they're shown in comics, you use how they're shown in movies, TV, to form what you think about them. And when I decided to leave, I was like, oh, well, I'm going to start a podcast. And then from the podcast came the website, because I missed the writing, I missed the research, I missed the teaching. And then that was when it just kind of took off. And I don't know, for some reason, people like what I have to say, I think, or like arguing with me, one of the two things. But I applaud both, because sometimes I need to be argued with, and that makes me a better person. So yeah, that's just what happened. I pivoted in life, and I very much didn't want to give up on it. I didn't want to give up on pop culture and become like a stuffy suit. I still work in corporate America, but like,
don't we all? Don't we
like
all?
Movies.
We do. We do all, actually. I mean, I was literally just talking to somebody. Like, it's funny. I don't know. You introduce yourself to new people, and the first thing you say, or the first thing they say when you confess you're a film critic, some don't even know what it is, and they'll just respond with like, what does being a film critic even mean? Like I'm sorry if I sound ignorant, but like, what does it mean? And I'm always like, you're not ignorant. Like, it's a strange thing to be like, I go see movies and write my opinions for outlets that then publish them, and then they're in the world. And it's that release, though, like you're talking about, like going back to the corporateness of it all. I mean, you're talking to somebody with a business degree. I think we're all in the same kind of boat, where it's like we had other plans for our lives, and yet we all ended up here, and now we're talking about weird ass fucking Korean horror movies and shit, and spreading the gospel of Demon Wind, for example. But it's from that love and passion that I think it's hard to convey to some certain groups, I guess, to say, because not everyone has this, you know. I bring this up often, but I still have friends from home who like got me into movies, but they don't want to hear what I have to say anymore, because it's like, well, I just want to know if it's good. Like, shut up. Like, what, you know, that kind of opinion. So it's wrestling with the idea that I have found an escape through pop culture and through my own voice and writing the same. I don't know why people read me, listen to me, but I'm going to keep doing it until people stop. Yeah. So this is your fault, listeners. I don't know, I guess to say, but yeah. It's the appreciation that I'm able to do this, and that, you know, even today I'm selling reviews at Fantastic Fest still, and you know, you look around, you're like, how'd I get here? But then you're like, what am I doing here anyway, though? Like, it's that constant struggle of like, it's almost like Sisyphus, just fucking boulder up the hill. When does it ever get better?
You know, 100% to everything you just said. And two, I actually think the only time I've ever felt validated, not that like I seek validation in my opinions, but more so that I felt validated in my belief that pop culture moves us, is my mom saw, oh my God, why is the name of the movie escaping me? Martin Scorsese, 3 hours. Last year.
Irishman? No.
Flower Moon.
Yeah. Killers of the Flower Moon.
Killers of the Flower Moon. I hate that just left my mind because of what important thing I'm going to say. And the important thing is that I am Mexican. I'm also indigenous, and I'm Native. And my family, there was a program that moved Kickapoo, folks who were Kickapoo, over the border to help them settle the Rio Grande area and near Eagle Pass, stuff like that. But when that happened, because there was a lot of forced assimilation, like in Texas, my family just completely cut off multiple parts of our indigeneity. And my mom watched Killers of the Flower Moon, and she called me and she was like, I think I'm going to try and get our tribal paperwork. And I was like, I've been asking you this for well into 2 decades, woman. What? And she just explained to me that there was something about seeing it ripped away on film that made it mean more. And mind you, like, my mom got hit in school for speaking Spanish. My mom is the only brown person in me and my mom are the only two brown people who came out brown from my grandmother and my grandfather. And so, like, she has experienced God, infinite amount more than I have. But that movie made her feel it. And I think it was because it was this, like, out of body thing for her, where, like, it meant more because it was happening to somebody else, and it meant more because it was beautifully shot. And I think that is probably the only moment that I could trace things back and feel like, oh crap, because she didn't read my review, but I'd written about parts of that in my review, and it was like, oh, this does mean something. This isn't just a feeling I'm having. And I think that, like, I don't seek validation in anything, but I think when it pops up like that, and I'm sure we all have stories like that where it's like, oh crap, that hits me. Yeah, I don't know where I was going with that, but that's when you were talking, that's what it made me think about.
Well, actually, I want to follow up on that too, because I know professionally in your day job, you've worked in diversity, equity, and inclusion. I know that's something that you emphasize both at butwhythough.net as well as you're writing in other places. I know that you've been a sensitivity reader for projects. One of the things that I noticed about you early and has been reinforced throughout our friendship is the idea that you are excited to bring people along. Like, I don't think of you as someone who is not creating space for people to learn, that you're sort of like, get up to speed and then you can come sit in my circle, you can have conversations with me. A lot of the writing that you do, a lot of the media criticism that you do, the film criticism you do, I feel like you're being excited that people want to go on this journey and learn more and learn how to be more empathetic and inclusive. So I want to ask how that has kind of those merging of your professional identities and your work as a media critic and writer, how did those two things come together for you?
Well, I think the first thing I say is I wasn't always that way. I was kind of a dick a lot of the time, like, just that, because I, like, when I came immediately out of my PhD, like, I was angry. Like, I didn't have a chip on my shoulder. Like, I had a whole damn boulder there. And I think that professionally, I was able to have professionally, it was easier because I was able to understand my need to move this company and have something impactful happen in a way that could be measured. I could see an impact being done by what I was doing, and teaching and having people move with me was natural. And I had a piece of it. And then in the personal side of things and in the writing side of things, like, I was pretty just, like, coming out of it, like 2019, like 2018, 2019, like, I was probably angriest I've ever been. And because it was fresh out of that stuff. And I think what I realized along the way is that, like, oh yeah, if I keep yelling at people, I'm gonna be fighting by myself, and it's a lot easier to do this. And I think really what it was too was understanding, and I think that this came through me better understanding and traveling throughout the South, is that sometimes people are just ignorant. And I don't say that in a bad way. I mean, they just do not know. And some people want to know, and some people want to learn, and some people want to grow. And if you meet them in bad faith, you're never going to be able to give them that moment. And so, just like, as I was coming out of that period, it just became really natural to shift that, to make the professional personal, and to pull that out into everything that I was doing. Because it was one of the things too, is like, when you look like me, there's not a lot of spaces for you that are going to be automatically given. Nothing's going to be automatically given to anyone, first off. But also, it means that you're a little bit more intimidated to talk to certain people or go into circles. And you really only get somewhere if people are speaking your names in the rooms that you're not in. And if you just keep yelling at people, that's not going to happen. And then you, like, leave a bad taste in their mouth when somebody who isn't you comes up, but also shares some of those things. And it's an incredible burden to carry, because, like, some people just get to be assholes and live their life, and I am envious of it. but you don't really get that when you're marginalized for any number of cents. And it's kind of like, I made the active choice, and not everybody has to do this, to want to be the door opener, to want to be that bridge for people, to help them, to introduce them, to do things. And a lot of that is also because I started meeting more people, more Latinos in the industry, more marginalized people in the industry who were being that bridge for me. And as you just mature, you kind of start to do it. I think it was always easier with the site because I wasn't just like angry Twitter lady. I was like, no, how do I nurture new writers? How do I build somebody? How do I introduce them to editors? And so that part was always easy. It was like the personal persona that I think was probably the hardest, to make sure that I was taking what I devoted my entire life to, but actually putting it into practice in daily life. And I think that that's always the hard thing. And I think when you have gone through really bad experiences, it's sometimes a larger hurdle to go over. But at the end of the day, people don't care that you're angry because a whole bunch of shit that happened to you. They just care that you were an asshole to them one time, and now they're not going to help you ever. And that's their right. And I think that we can all just be a little bit kinder and everything. And that's ultimately what inclusivity is. Like, if you strip back the race, if you strip back gender, if you strip back religion, it's just being like kinder to people. Have a little Southern hospitality and let somebody in, talk to them. And you know what? If they're an asshole, don't invite them back to your house. But sometimes you just got to invite somebody to your house and experience things with them. So yeah. I don't know if that was a good answer. It's a weird answer. I've actually been thinking a lot about that to myself. So
well, here now you can listen to this podcast episode in maybe a few months' time and still feel like, does that answer ring true for yourself to you? So you've benchmarked. This is a benchmark, and now you have something to compare against in the future.
Man, why is this podcast therapy?
It's always been therapy for us. That's basically why we invite guests on. We're like, let's have cool people and talk about our problems. It's better than Blue Sky in that regard. So last question for you then, talking about your house, butwhythough.net, spelled, by the way, in case anybody wants to know, BUTWHYTHO. If you know your internet speak, the Y is spelled out. It's not just the Y. Butwhythough.net. We have, Donato and I always feel a kinship with independent website owners and people that run their own publications for very, very obvious reasons. Particular kinship with you because you went from podcast to publication, which is the same weird, fucked up route that we took. A lot is being said about the death of media. So to continue the therapy, how are you feeling as an independent publication owner in the year of our Lord 2025? Like, how do you feel about the current state of media criticism, games criticism, film criticism, all these things that people say you should be worried about?
Wait, you're giving her 2 minutes to answer this?
Like, I'm giving her a couple minutes if she wants. I will break this wherever I damn well want to break it, Donato.
Look, if alcohol wasn't so expensive, I would be drinking more. But
wait. You live in Texas. I live in LA. You're not allowed to.
No, I live in Austin, Texas. If I lived out in Frisco, it'd be a little bit easier.
I am anticipating my like $5 beer in Austin versus the $10 one here in LA.
Oh, dude, they're at $8 now. Look, hey, I found a good place that gives you a mystery beer, which is whatever tap they're running out of for $3, and that's just what we do. It is amazing. It's great. Sometimes it's a Coors Banquet, and sometimes it's a great summertime shandy.
I'm gonna Venmo you a $20, Donato, and I demand that you and Kate go get a drink at the Draft House during Fantastic Fest this week.
Fucking easy.
Sorry, continue, please.
No, it's fucking depressing. It's really depressing, and I think that it's harder. I'm trying to think what I want to say, because the thing is we're all kicking around the same $5 to different Patreons, different subs, correct, different things, and it's getting increasingly harder to keep going while paying people, to keep going while sacrificing your I think especially for site runners, because like most of the time if you're a site runner, you are doing reviews, you're picking stuff up. Essentially, if I need something covered and the lead time isn't going to be long, or people just want to pick it up, I just do it myself because I do not pay myself, which means I am probably writing more than I should. And then also trying to like freelance to get more money to put in the site, which is where all my freelance money goes. And I think it feels like everything is hitting a wall, because you just don't know where the money's going to come from. And it is, I think, on the film side, it doesn't feel as different because we have always been a home to people who were chewed up and spit out by like VC backed film sites, and they just wanted a place where they could write about things they were passionate about, write about international film, write about genres that don't get looked at, and we were able to do that. On the game site, watching that collapse happen in real time and be in the middle of it, and also not have anybody on that in that side of the house understand what is happening to them, while like me and my husband who co-runs the site with me are like screaming from the rooftops, this happened in film. Yeah. And trying to help where we can. It's hard because you feel like a canary in the coal mine, but beyond that, like finding the desire to keep going is probably harder, because right now I would say from games it is the worst, because you have so many people who I understand their frustration, who were known writers for years at established places, and they start their own stuff, which is great and perfect. We need more indie sites. We need more funding for those indie sites. But then the first thing they do is undercut everybody who is existing in the space before them. There was one guy who was angry that, like, I think it was PC Gamer didn't get a code for a game, and was like, why do all these sites that you don't read have code, and PC Gamer couldn't get code? And it's like stuff like that. That's the hard thing for me in this giant collapse. The money sucks, but the amount that I think smaller sites like ours are kind of getting thrown under the bus, that hurts more, because it's already hard to feel like you're peers with somebody, and when you see that happening consistently, they probably don't meet me, they probably don't know about my site, that's fine, but when you read it, it just feels bad, and like that makes it harder to go. Like the poor, like not making a lot of money, whatever, like I can freelance and find ways to pay my writers. We've been doing it for 8-9 years at this point, but the eating each other is what I can't deal with right now. And I think that's going to be the death of media. And that's the thing nobody's really grappling with. It's easier to talk about all the logistics. It's harder to talk about the ways in which, that's happening. Well, I don't know. Yeah.
No, I doubling back on that, just very quickly, like I've been having those same kind of conversations with people. And I think my sticking point is social media is part of it too. And social media is part of the idea of like seeing everything, when it's exactly what you said. Like I assume 90%, no, let's be realistic. 98% of the critical community has no idea who I am or ever will. And that's fine. Mm-hmm. Like I am becoming better with that. Again, speaking of therapy, I'm having some good conversations recently, but I think that is the hardest part, where at least there was a time, maybe just go back 6 years, when we were on Twitter, it wasn't a fucking cesspool of hatred, and people used it in a way that, like, I used to get excited when like Anya Stanley or Ashley Blackwell would like retweet a piece, and like, or even just respond to it and just be like, dude, like this is so good. And I'm like, why are you telling me that? Like, you're better than me. This is stupid. Or just engagement, just people wanting to be curious about what their peers are doing. But you're right. That was at a time when there were so many more opportunities for everyone, and it was no longer the dogfight that it kind of is now, where that has like washed away. And it almost feels like anyone in the industry who follows me, the engagement's gone, and they're just watching to see where I write, so that when I'm done writing there, they can pounce it. That's all it feels like anymore. So like the love in that way is kind of like faded away. Like the word community I haven't used in forever. I think that got misconstrued a lot of times. And even saying peers, like I have a hard time now saying peers in the same way, because I know that plenty others would not use that word anymore. And it's just like, okay, cool, I get it. And it's hard. We're all just getting ground to fucking dust by this industry, but trying to find a way to survive. I don't know. There's no other option at this point. And I'm trying to at least be positive about it. And again, like we're both talking about websites where we're trying to bring people along, put voices up, the podcast too. Like we do our best with the podcast to try to give the platform to people who might not always have it, or vice versa. So, it's just been so much. And yeah, like, I think I don't have therapy tomorrow because I'm going to Fantastic Fest. So I think this is a good supplement.
Working in your system. Yeah, I know we could talk about this for a while. We always do talk a little bit about the industry, but I promise folks we would keep it at, like, you're right, Donato, 2 minutes was not enough time. Promise we keep this as much on the rails as possible. So I think talking about collaboration and community, let's do a but why though and certified forgotten collab here. Let's talk about a movie together between the editors in chiefs of our two sites. So when we get back, we are going to talk about Metamorphosis, which is the pick of the day. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. So today on the podcast, Kate has picked for us Metamorphosis. It is available to stream on Shudder, which most of our listeners at this point probably should or have or will have again access to, so you know where to get it. But if you haven't seen it before and you need a little bit of a description, here's a short plot synopsis. When Father Jungsu is called upon to perform an exorcism on a teenage girl, he does not expect his extended family to be caught in the crossfire. But when the girl dies despite his best efforts, the final words from the departing demon are that Junsu's family will be next. Meanwhile, his brother and his family are facing their own hardships, relocating to a new part of the country to avoid the bad publicity that haunts their uncle. It turns out they got a great deal on a new place. And like most horror movies that open with cheap real estate, the entire family will soon pay a terrible price for the religious interference. Among other festival accolades, Metamorphosis was a Blue Dragon Film Awards nominee, which is one of the highest awards for films in its native South Korea. Kate, sometimes our guests have a hard time finding movies that fall within that criteria. We were 3 emails in. We said, "Do you want a guest?" You said, "Sure." What kind of movie? We gave you the boundaries. You were like, "Done." Metamorphosis. What made you want to talk about this one?
I've been dying to talk about this movie with anybody who has seen it or I can force to watch it. I've actually never been able to talk about this film with anyone. And a lot of it is because I think that there is how do I say it? With international film, especially international film that have certain auteurs within them, it makes it harder for other films from those countries to get seen, even when they do have something to offer. And this one in particular has always thrilled me, and rewatching it, I still felt the same way because you have this very sharp mixing of Korean horror and Korean horror tropes and larger Asian horror tropes and American horror. And I think that it is pretty, I don't want to say pretty rare, but it's very distinct to have that type of approach to exorcism in Korean film and Asian film more generally. And it's why I initially picked up this film to review. It's why I ended up reviewing it, and it's why I chose it.
Donato, you were telling me that, telling both of us before the podcast, that you maybe changed your mind a little bit on this one, a rewatch. You are one of the original published reviews on Rotten Tomatoes for this. You did not give it a fresh score. That might change if you were to do it again today.
Yeah, it was an interesting watch back because correct me if I'm wrong, but this was a lockdown release. What year?
Mhm.
What year was it? Yeah, so we're talking about a lockdown release. Shudder was doing a really good job ramping up and hitting us with like one horror movie a week. I think they had that whole program going on where you're all locked in, so we're just going to get as much in your face as we can. So I was doing every one of them, and I read back my review right before this podcast, and I still do kind of agree with some of my complaints. I think the length is there where something like The Wailing, that is such a transformative movie that takes that 2.5 hours but tells like 3 different stories within, and the way it transitions between tones, it's beautiful. I feel like Metamorphosis doesn't fully have a grasp on maneuvering through what you just said, Kate, like all those great ways of like, it's American
Yeah.
horror, but it's also Korean horror. But something about the priest character and his kind of wrestle with his religion and stuff like that, and putting that with the common tropes of a family that is going against each other because there's a possession that's kind of swapping around, and one time it's mom, one time it's dad, and who's the doppelganger. I feel like that was drawn out a little bit too much, so that's where I struggled with it. But getting back to the main point, upon my rewatch, the visuals are really strong, and I think I undercredited just the impact of some of the chase sequences, the impact of the family, these daughters having to look at a father and wonder if he's going to smash him with a hammer or snap out of whatever trance he's in. And there's a lot of good stuff going on there. So I think at this point on a second watch, knowing the problems that I was walking into, I was able to enjoy the better elements of it more. And I do think I probably would swing positive at this point.
I love that. I love when we have someone change their mind on the podcast. Kate, let's unpack. It's us. Let's unpack the Catholicism here a little bit, because I think that is, to your point, I think that one of the things that makes this movie such a fascinating experience is that, and Donato, what you kind of noted is so it's like you noted it a little bit as a detraction, but watching the Catholicism sort of subsume, or like overcome some of the cultural specificity is intentional, feels intentional in this film, but it's also fascinating to watch because Catholicism is this weird, oftentimes fucked up shared language that we all have, where like we see that in other places, we can connect with that wherever we are, and it's strange to see a movie that it kind of like lets the Catholicism come to the foreground in a country that we don't necessarily think of as a traditionally Catholic country. So, Kate, what did you think of the young priest? What did you think of the multinational depiction of Christianity, of Catholicism that we saw in this?
So one, hot priest, always good. That has
Okay.
to be said.
Yes,
But
chef.
yes. So what I actually find the most compelling thing about like choosing, because I talked about a little bit earlier, exorcism is everywhere in so
Yeah.
many Korean horror films. But the reason I thought that the choice for having it be a Catholic exorcism is because Christianity and Catholicism in Korea, it is a colonialist religion. That's what it is. It is also the basis for a lot of cults in Korea that take people's money and have them commit suicide and do all other types of atrocities. And so when I'm watching this, on my second rewatch, I didn't have all this knowledge on my first one, but on my second rewatch, having learned so much more about the place that Christianity and Catholicism takes up in Korean culture, and almost the skepticism that a lot of South Koreans do meet it with, it makes a lot of that, it makes a lot of the rougher edges. I have my review up, and one of the things that I said was that I felt like it felt like two stories that weren't emotionally matched at times throughout the film, which is why I took points off for it. But now watching it, it was never going to be evenly matched because Catholicism is the outsider in all of this. And when you kind of like look at it with that view, that I had more of an appreciation for those jagged edges where things were being pushed together versus just not seeing them. Like I just like feeling like they were just jammed in there. I could kind of see the reasoning for it, which I thought was really interesting. I also think that it to the conversation we had about horror kind of giving you cultural lenses. I also think that one of the important things you can do is understanding that a country is never really going to be homogenous, and kind of looking at how they explore different ways of dealing with this. And I can't think of another exorcism film. There are some K-dramas that have Catholicism in it. But I can't think of another Korean exorcism film outside of maybe like some of the recent Welgo releases that have Catholicism at its heart. So this was one of the first times that I had seen it done. Not saying they're not there. I do not have the entire filmography in my head, but it was the first time that I saw it front and center and done this way.
It is nice to know that no matter where you go, there's a Catholic priest who's probably fucking up an exorcism, like right there.
Yes.
Like it's sort of like the McDonald's of being Christian. It's like, oh, if I could just go find a Catholic priest fucking up an exorcism, then I don't feel homesick.
Exactly.
Donato, you had hit a little bit on the special effects, in particular, which this was a first time watch for me for this podcast, and that's kind of what stood out. This is not a cheap film. I mean, I don't know what the budget is off the top of my head, but it was not a movie that was made to cash in on genre. This was a film that was going for broke with some pretty impressive special effects, certainly some pretty impressive set design, which is kind of I think the film's calling card. Talk a little bit about the VFX in this, the special effects, the costuming and the makeuping that it does, Donato, because I am curious what was more noticeable 5 years later on a rewatch for you.
Yeah, noticeable is interesting. because again, I clocked how vicious this movie can be, and talking about exorcism films of the past, present, and future, there's always a standard to what you'd expect, and that is probably one possessed person, whether they're tied to a bed or chained to a wall, whatever it is. But there's going to be one character that is caked in whatever devilish cosmetics to make them look possessed and all these things, but not much else. That's typically what we're expecting from an exorcism film. But you do get a lot in, well, I'm just trying to think of like specifics, like you said, like what really got me, but there's just more violence in the
Mm.
way that we perceive, whether that's the father going next door to the neighbor, and there's just all the, like, it looks like a Texas Chainsaw fucking scene because you have all
Yep.
these like animals and stuff, and the skinnings and what is being used. And then you get to the actual, I mean, a kid gets thrown in a furnace and that gets turned on. It's very South Korean in the sense that it's not going to hold back for the bigger elements. It's not going to hold back that, you watch The Conjuring and there's some spookies going around there. Like, you've got the why am I blanking on the fucking, not the tall man, but why am I blanking on the man, the big
Slender
man?
Man?
Crooked Man? What do you got?
Yes, the
Sentient
Crooked Man. Holy
There you
shit,
go.
that
I
just
got you.
left
I got you,
my
buddy. That's what I'm here
fucking
for.
brain. But yes, you have the Crooked Man, you have the Nun, you have these other creatures that exist and that haunt, but there's one person that is the focus. There's one person
Yeah.
that is. And here you have the demonization of multiple people. You have the whole family. You have the effects jumping from one person to one person. You have the actual brutality that is happening to multiple people, and it's almost like a murder mystery going on at the same time in some degrees. So that is what got me. Like, that, again, that's what I had to be reminded of. That's,
Yeah.
it's a longer film and you have to go through it and you have to go through all the motions, but as with The Wailing or Train to Busan or something like that, there are bigger parts to this, and I think there's a different version of Metamorphosis that is just contained within the house,
Yeah.
and you don't have anything else happening outside. And while part of me in my early review, like, I literally wrote, like, I wish this was the exorcism movie that just stayed contained and didn't try to do too much. But I don't know, maybe that was too fucking dickish of me to say at the first time, because all those extra elements, they do add something. They're not throwaway. I get very touchy about movies touching that 2.5 hour, 220-minute barrier.
Yeah.
And you've
Yeah.
really got to sell it. You've really got to make me understand why we've gone over the 2 hour mark and what these scenes mean and why they're necessary. So that's the struggle within me. The tiny movie that this could have been, I think I would have fucking really loved. But the bigger movie that it is, in its mess and in its maybe long-windedness, I think I didn't give it enough credit.
Yeah. I think one of the things for me that kind of touches on less the effects and I think the acting. So one of the things that somebody may not know is how big this cast is actually. Like Bae Sung-woo, who plays Jungsu, is a really famous actor, and with a lot of career highs that aren't playing this type of role. I think the one that would be really exciting if you're listening to this and you have watched All of Us Are Dead on Netflix or Hospital Playlist, Choi Yi-hyun is in it, and this is one of her earlier roles. Like, the acting in this film when I first watch it and again on the second rewatch is what sold it for me. There's a particular scene, it's not the most brutal, but it is the most unnerving, and it is when the mother swipes the food off the table, like when they're at the dinner table eating. Like, that for me hit in a violent way, then like more viscerally than some of the other violence did. And it was those little nuances, the close-ups of the faces, the reactions to the thing happening. Like the entire cast in that house, which I do agree, Donato, like it is very much like this could have been like a very high movie had it been contained. And the bloat does drag some of it down, but I still do really appreciate it overall. And it is just that acting. it's the ability to, I think also a way that they pair up a lot of the drama and terrorization is like the mother with the son, the daughters with the father, and it automatically puts in a lot of these like larger societal themings that we have in our mind of how families should work and who should protect who. And you see that just kind of like uncased and flipped and just torn apart consistently, that I think makes this like just a really good watch. And the violence is just, I have a pretty high tolerance, and I forgot how balls to the wall this fucking movie goes.
Yeah.
with just messing with the family. Yeah, the acting, man.
Yeah, I want to give credit specifically to Sung Dong-il, who plays the father of the family.
Yeah.
We have seen a million times in these sorts of films the entity or the evil or the demon or whatever take possession of the father and force the father to do terrible things to their family. Call it the the Ryan Reynolds Amityville as a shorthand. Call it whatever you want, right?
Yeah.
And that's fine. And we will probably at Fantastic Fest, either via screeners or in person this weekend, watch another movie where a demon gets into a dad. The dad like can no longer be trusted, turns on the family. That's not interesting. What's interesting is what Metamorphosis does, where there's just a fucking guy who can't meet the moment, where he's just kind of a shitty dad, kind of a shitty husband, and like is put in this extraordinary situation and just does not measure up in any meaningful way. It's not his fault. He's not that guy. It's totally fine that he's not that guy, except it is kind of a matter of life or death. And I think that that gets to the family dynamic you're talking about, Kate, which is it's interesting to watch these characters bounce off of each other because they both are and aren't the same kind of horror characters that we've seen in these family haunted house or possession movies. I mean, we talk about the sister who gets yoinked into the furnace. The body count, she's spoiler alert, she's the member of the family that doesn't fucking make it. And by everything that's coded into every horror movie we've ever seen, she's supposed to be the one, right? Like she's the one that gets it. She's clear-eyed about what's going on. She's the one that's keeping the peace, and she's the one that gets it worst of all. These little decisions, the way that they subvert the tropes of genre films and give you characters that are both more than and less than what we're used to seeing, that's fun. That's how a horror movie captures our attention.
And I think too, and I want to, do you all know the film, the Fantastic Fest film that this director also directed?
I do not.
Project Wolf Hunting.
Oh,
is
fuck
it him?
yeah.
Oh, well, there you go. Talk about vicious. Fuck me.
Wow,
Yeah.
I didn't look that up. Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I didn't really look at that.
I only know because I interviewed him and I brought it up in like the pre-banter stuff. Because it's funny because I think that there's restraint that's shown here that I know he doesn't have when you look at something like Project Wolf Hunting. And I think when you view them together, it makes me excited, kind of wanting to know what he's going to do next. I think the only thing he has on the docket from what I've seen is just Gangs of London, I think. But like I think that when you put the two films together, like Project Wolf Hunting is about as unhinged as you can go with like Con Air and Predator in one thing on a boat. And then this, it shows, I think, to me, if you put them in conversation with each other, an understanding of like American cinema in a way that makes me really appreciate them. And in a really cool way that doesn't strip its own cultural elements out of it, which I want to see more of. And it's what I want more directors, I think especially Korean directors now, with so much pressure and so many Korean directors coming into Pan-American stories and like coming with American studios. I want to see more of that, like the inspiration, but done in their way. And I think that, like, I don't know, it's really cool.
I've always appreciated, one of the reasons I love and mostly thrillers and horror, I won't claim any broad knowledge, but Korean cinema in particular, is there's a lack of I don't want to call it reverence, but the boundaries between genres are permeable. They will, Korean filmmakers will make something that has one foot in the world of horror, one foot in the world of gothic, one foot in the world of like a traditional noir, and that's part of the fun, is watching them kind of move with the story to where the story takes them. And I think that's something that, you point out with this director, Project Wolf Hunting and Metamorphosis, I think that's something American cinema could use a little bit more of, right? Like I get really excited, and I bring him up all the time. So apologies, Donato. I'm more excited that Osgood Perkins did The Monkey than I am that he did Long Legs or something else, because like I know he can do a Long Legs, right? Like I
Yeah.
know he can do like a moody tone poem of an anxiety riddled thriller, but kind of a Final Destination esque, you know, Rube Goldberg of A Killer Monkey. Like that's fun. I want my horror directors to show that they're capable of doing highbrow and lowbrow. I don't need somebody to just make a version of the same film every single time out. And so that's kind of the appeal of a filmmaker like this and a movie like this is I like the range. Like, yeah, go make your A24 horror film. Nothing wrong with that. But then go make a comedy, a horror comedy, or go do something else
Mm-hmm.
and show me that you are in service of a good idea more than you are kind of like developing your individual
Yeah.
style for marketability. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but the range is what I respond to the most with filmmakers.
Yeah, and bringing up Project Wolf Hunting, staying in that world because I fucking love that movie.
Yeah.
I know you do.
Talking about the Americanization, that was a really good point because Monocle number one, you are correct. I would love if more American movies took lessons and actually incorporated like international flavor, because
Yeah.
there's so much more creativity going on elsewhere. That's not saying American horror movies are useless. Like, that is far from it. I still love American horror movies, but most of the time I know what I'm getting. And my
Yeah.
favorite American horror movies of late have been obvious homages to international and other more, let's say, creative areas, where when I watch a Project Wolf Hunting, I want to make sure it's still South Korean, though. I want to make sure
Yeah.
what I'm watching is still like, it has the essence of Asian cinema, but with the, oh, we also love fucking The Rock, and we also love, you know, again, like you said, run down the list. We play
Yeah.
Resident Evil, we love watching Con Air, we love all this other stuff, but it's still at the end of the day isn't an American movie. It's just influenced
Yeah.
by American ideals, and we still get somebody else's take on it. And
It's our pop culture reflected back at us.
Yeah.
exactly.
Well, I would say too, like, it's syncretic versus colonial. Like, one of the things that people don't realize that happens with pop culture a lot, and we see it with our export of heroes, like, soft power is a colonial construct. Like, it is the ways in which we force somebody else or we encourage somebody else to start thinking the way that we do. But when you have the alternate to that is that through just basic exposure, exploration, or in the case of having something pushed upon you, when you make it your own and when you show the ways in which your culture has informed the way that you have watched these things, it becomes more interesting and it becomes more unique, especially in a landscape where that is what we should be doing more of, like, regardless of where it comes from. And I completely agree. I think that it's been really fascinating to see. I would even say, I would even go as far as, like, even outside horror films, like, a lot of American directors and screenwriters actually, like, owning up to, like, oh yeah, I love the hell out of Naruto, that's why I put that in there, or like something like that, which I know is like kind of reductionist, but I do think that, like, for too long publicly there was just like what like revered international voices, and anything outside of that just wasn't really front and center. And now it feels like so many more people are embracing the global nature of the world and the connected nature of the world, that we're getting more of the stories like this. And I hope it's just the start of it.
Yeah, agreed. And if you want to go see films that are falling kind of in the canon of what we're talking about today, let's do Fantastic Fest reference number whatever. I think that one of the things that program, those programmers, and honestly that audience are all kind of in alignment on is to see films like this, to see films that are a mishmash of Hollywood tropes interpreted and run through cultural specificity, to see our culture reflected back at us. It's one of the things that I love the most about that festival is when I see a movie like that, I go, or the other way around. I love The Perfection. The Perfection is just America does South Korean thriller, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
that kind of exchange of ideas between cultures is something I always look forward to at Fantastic Fest, figuring out the international films that are basically doing like, you know what, I grew up in the 90s. My favorite slasher was this, so I'm going to do my version of it. That's fun to see.
Yeah. It's an aside. I think this the film, the series I'm gonna mention real quick is like really disturbing. But it's on Netflix. It's called Trigger, and I think it's one of like the most interesting cases of taking American concepts and mapping it onto Korea. So in Trigger, so Korea has very strict gun laws, and very few, if any, outside of like hunting rifles, unless you're police or military, it has access to guns. But what happens is all of a sudden somebody starts trafficking guns into Korea and giving them to people who are on like the edge of things. And as Americans, it's a very hard series to watch. It's like 8 episodes, but it is actually South Korea and I think it's Kwan Kwanos Kwanosun, I think. The showrunner is tackling this American concept within the Korean context and seeing how, because that's an export. Our films export it, our news goes over there. And I think that like as we have more platforms, whether it's Shutter, getting distribution rights for films like Metamorphosis, or Netflix actually partnering with some of the largest production studios in Korea to make original series, we're gonna see more of this in such a cool way, and I can't wait for festivals to pick up more of them. And I think Fantastic, like you said, has always been ahead of the curve. But if anybody's interested, I think going down the rabbit hole that is Trigger, know that it's very disturbing, in like a psychological way, especially with our current climate. But I think that that's a really good example of some of the stuff we've been talking about.
So we'll end where we always do on the podcast, which is to talk about how this film goes from underseen, again, our completely arbitrary requirement that has 10-ish or fewer reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, to whatever the new canon is going to look like. Donato, you mentioned that there are old certified forgotten classics that are getting repertory play at festivals like Fantastic Fest and TIFF. They had some previously covered films at TIFF as well. Let's talk about that. Kate, how does a film like Metamorphosis find its audience? How does it stand out amidst, the hundreds of other movies available on streamers that look kind of like this one but aren't?
I think it really is like the people putting it on a list, the people making a podcast about it. Like to be honest, I think that's a lot of what it is. It's how you see a lot of things kind of resurface, but I also think it comes to how much the person with the rights is going to market it, which is one of the sad things to say. Like that's kind of the first piece. Like if you take something like G Kids, which is playing Angel's Egg at Fantastic Fest, which is a 4K restoration. And they've also done quite a few others. Or AMC and Shutter actually did last crap Bloodlust, Vampire Hunter D, I think. But like you're seeing stuff like that happen, and I think I don't have the right answer other than like people should put them on their lists and people should recommend it to friends and it can just be word of mouth. But I think the real answer is having distributors see the value in these types of films and understanding that replaying is really how you can not only show a new audience, but also get that same type of steam that you would on that first release.
Yeah.
And doing more to curate them. And I think that that's probably been my nitpicky thing that I've had with every streaming platform throughout the years, is resurfacing their older stuff that they've put out before that matches like a vibe or a genre or even an actor of who's currently in like what they just released. I think it really takes a lot of that forethought to pair 2 and 2 together, to take what's new and be like, oh, you like this thing that happened? Well, we released this thing 5 years ago. This is really close to it. Go watch it. So,
yeah. Donato, are you putting this on your lists? You got another strategy?
I mean, lists is, especially for a Shutter movie, it's already gotten that bump, as we mentioned. So when something hits Shutter, when something is available to that niche audience, it's already getting a little more of an advantage. Like that is itself is like a boutique release to Vinegar Syndrome, just in a different way. So it's going on lists, of course, even just to say, hey, did you enjoy Project Wolf Hunting? Well, look what this guy did beforehand. It's not the same, but look at the range, like you said before, a director with range who can do so many tones and play around in different sandboxes. So when you're thinking about the wide breadth of independent and international horror cinema and trying to give people options, it's the rabbit hole effect. you give them one title and you let them go down it, whether it's like, hey, here's one title on Shudder and let's see where you end up in 3 weeks, or here is once again a list. I'm an advocate for the SEO play of a list, because it shouldn't just be a churned out piece of shit.
Yes.
It should be curated. It
Yes.
gives the author a chance to really turn people onto movies that deserve the spotlight. So if you're doing it the right way, lists are very fun and lists are very informative. It's just what they've turned into in the wrong hands. So am I putting it on a list like number 1? Yeah. I'm putting it on a list. Number 2, I'm writing the damn list. Fuck this.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, to be honest, because I hadn't looked up the credits for everybody in the film, because obviously All of Us Are Dead wasn't out when this first came out. So for Korean series that are really like have a really large American audience on Netflix, we try to do cast lists for everything so that we can highlight the other films or series that we think people should watch. So that way, like, my thing that what our site is really passionate about, not just me, like my film crew and my TV crew are so in love with it, is the idea that, like, when you watch international film, that should not just be the only one you watch, and that should not just be during award season or whatever everybody's talking about, but like people need to know where to go next. And so because we have quite a few people on at the site who know a lot about Korean cinema and Korean dramas, we've really focused on doing that with actors. So when All of Us Is Dead season 2 comes out, I am actually going to be doing that for some of those actors, and this is going to be one of those films I shove in everybody's face.
There we go. There we go. And what was it? Bong Joon said, get over the 1-inch barrier. Get over that 1-inch barrier to international cinema. We promise you're not going to notice the subtitles when all they say is screaming and there's a monster or a demon in the background too. Y'all got this. I think you can do it. All right. That is our episode of Metamorphosis. Kate, wanted to have you on the show for a long time. So glad you could join us. I know that you've got, we were talking before we recorded, and you've got a lot on the horizon coming up over the next 2 weeks. Where can folks go to find your writing, to support your site, to follow the things you may be doing out and about?
Yeah, you can find all of my writing over on butwhythough.net. You can find us on Blue Sky, where we post the most, at butwhythough.net, and then we're on everything else at butwhythough PC. And yeah, like I don't know, I think it's really hard to ask for your $5. But if you want to support us and our really cool crew of people where all the money goes directly to them, it go to butwhythough.net/support. We're doing a lot of work. We just got done with covering TIFF. I am covering Fantastic Fest, and then immediately after I will be covering MagicCon. So we really do touch everything. And one of the cool things that I like highlighting about our site is because we don't restrict anybody into just film or just games or just TV. A lot of these projects that are coming out that are cross medium or adaptations usually always get a really critical look, but they also get a look by people who understand what they were the first time. And I think that's something that we always try to bring and always try to show that lens, even if sometimes it's a dueling opinion with a review that we put out, or vice versa, which I think is always fun. So yeah, come to us. We do things. Yeah.
And I'll say that I actually went. I'm going to hold myself accountable. I went a couple of weeks ago to subscribe and support butwhythough.net. I ran into some kind of like screen. I think you guys were doing some website updates or something like that. So I am going to, after this podcast, go give you my $5 to make sure that we continue to support independent film journalism. So if I can do it, everybody listening, you can do it as well. I'll give you a choice. Give your $5 to Certified Forgotten, or give it to Butwhy, or both if you can afford it. That's pretty cool too. Donato, how do folks connect with you online?
I'm going to say give it to both. I'm going to be greedier than Monocle.
Do it.
Because we could also use your support over here. We all do. But obviously, everyone's in their own means right now. The world's on fire, so do what you can. Like that, I am Matt Donato, Donato, BOMB, Donato Bomb on Blue Sky, Letterboxd, and Instagram. I still have to stop myself from saying Twitter. I've been saying Twitter for like anyone listening to the podcast is like, Donato, you said this for the last 5 months, and I know I'm gonna keep making the mistake. I'm sorry. It's just what it is. In any case, once again, Donato Bomb, Blue Sky, Letterboxd, Instagram, TikTok a little bit. Still trying to play around with it. We'll see once I get to a healthy point where I can do it every day. But yeah, what's on the horizon? Fantastic Fest, into Beyond Fest, into Brooklyn Horror Fest, into fucking Hibernation. So I have I just looked. I think I'm at about 15 reviews logged for Fantastic Fest that I'll be doing. So look for plenty of work from me.
Some of it maybe even on www.certifiedforgotten.com, our website, where we post original film criticism as well as essays from our guests. That's where you can find me mostly. You can also find me on Blue Sky. It's Monogle at the Blue Sky chart string. But why though? We have a newsletter. You can visit certifiedforgotten.com/newsletter to sign up. We are invited, have been cordially invited to be back at the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival this year. We have a slot on Sunday. I believe it's October 17th. Where we will be talking to a really cool guest. More information to follow on that about their own little horror journey and what's playing at the festival. So stay tuned. And yeah, if you can, take this as an inspiration. There's a lot of really cool and really talented writers who are starting their own ghosts, starting their own Substacks, hopefully ghosts. We should know better by now. And they definitely could use your support, but don't forget the folks that have been around for 5 years or more as well. Don't forget the folks that have been doing it for a long time, and those that give 100% of their proceeds to writers. That's Kate's team. That's our team. No shame. It's what we love doing. So I'm jealous that the two of you will be able to hang out this weekend at Fantastic Fest. But even if it was virtual, even if it didn't involve bad shots of alcohol, Kate, it was great to see you. And I can't wait until we hang out next time I'm in Austin.
Yeah, thank you also. Thank you for having me. It was really great.
Of course. Donato, take us home.
I'm sorry, Metamorphosis. I was wrong.